Tools of Titans by Timothy Ferris, brought to you by Mr. Mentorpreneur. Tim Ferriss shares the habits and beliefs of 101 accomplished individuals in his epic 707-page book, Tools of Titans. These individuals include media personalities Whitney Cummings and Edward Norton, tech investors Chris Sacca and Peter Thiel, entrepreneurs Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn and Phil Libin of Evernote, superhuman athletes Amelia Boone and Wim Hof, and more. These are the guidelines that prosperous individuals follow in order to accomplish their objectives, better themselves, and find happiness. The idea is that you can be more productive if you put the knowledge from this book into practice. Synopsis. Tim Ferriss describes the routines and convictions of 101 successful individuals in Tools of Titans, including tech investors, business owners, sportsmen, and artists. The book's thesis is that you may achieve success too if you adopt the behaviors and mindsets of those who achieve it in the manner that you want. We have totally reorganized the book for this synopsis, concentrating on the behaviors that are common to all 101 characters. This enables you to see the patterns in the actions of the Titans, how they maintain their motivation, achieve success in their careers, maintain their happiness, and maintain their health. Motivation and objectives. A lot of Titans make their long-term objectives visible, which makes it simpler to understand why they're battling. According to Arnold Schwarzenegger, the tasks in between are made simpler when one has a clear picture of the end result. Knowing your end objective makes it easier to endure the hardships that will be necessary to achieve it. Show courage. Have courage. Do you have a lofty objective that you'd want to pursue but don't feel prepared for? It's probable that you've placed unnatural limits on yourself. Several Titans discussed overcoming barriers that they had set for themselves or that society had imposed. Recognize that every Titan you look up to began where you are right now, facing really difficult challenges. The Titans were different in that they had the guts to overcome these challenges. Steve Jobs. Everything that surrounds you in life was created by individuals who lacked intelligence in comparison to you. Additionally, you have the power to alter it, have an impact on it, and create original works of art that are useful to others. Dan Carlin once said, "Don't be afraid to do something you're not qualified to do." Brené Brown, the author, takes a bold leap of faith, choosing bravery above safety. The Fear Exercise by Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss has an activity that might help you overcome your fears. The first step in making a change is to identify it. What would be the worst possible outcome if you made the change that scares you the most? Visualize the scenario with a high level of clarity. Is this the worst possible result? For how long would this harm last? In such a situation, how would you get back on your feet? From 0 to 100%, what is the likelihood of this most dire scenario? Having imagined the worst-case scenario, what would be the best-case scenario? How about a practical, positive result? Would this place improve your life in any way? By the end of the exercise, you will probably have the impression that the worst-case scenario is far from crippling. If everything else fails, you can always go back to your former self. Professional routines and advancement. Putting up the effort to achieve your objectives is the next step after deciding what they are. If you want to get more done in the time you have, here are some ways to do it. You must pay attention. How hectic is your life right now? That is not necessary. If you're going at a breakneck pace but still haven't accomplished much, it may be time to reevaluate your priorities. There is no more time for the giants in this book, even if they have hundreds of times more chances than the average individual. They must therefore direct their intense attention on the chances that will allow them to achieve their objectives. According to Cascade, a music producer, picture this. You're standing next to a glass jar filled with large stones, boulders, and sand. Prior to adding the large rocks, make sure there is enough room for the sand and pebbles. Everything fits, however, once you add the large boulders, then the pebbles, and finally the sand. Similarly, you won't have time for the important things if you get caught up in the little things. If it's not a hell yes, is author Derek Sivers's criterion for assessing prospects. It's a no. He doesn't waste time on opportunities that don't pique his interest, since he assumes they won't contribute anything to his objectives. Stay away from a culture of cortisol. Being always on the go and worrying about missing out are so promoted that it may make you worried all the time. In all honesty, you shouldn't have to deal with many crises. Stay focused on your long-term objectives and eliminate the 20% of your problems. Deciding what tasks to prioritize. With so many opportunities out there, it might be challenging to zero in on one path to professional success. Let me give you some advice. Become a triple or double danger. A lot of individuals want to be the greatest in the world at something, which is akin to becoming a good enough basketball player to get into the NBA. However, there is fierce competition and little chance of success in this. Rather, you may effortlessly excel in 2 or more areas and then blend them to great advantage. Entrepreneur and investor Mark Andreessen concurs, listing 5 abilities: communication, management, sales, finance, and internationalization that may enhance any job. Put in a job where you can't be simply replaced. This is your chance to have an original influence. Tim Ferriss considered becoming a full-time venture capitalist, VC, while he was developing his following around self-improvement. He was pushed aside by investor Kamal Ravikant, who said he would operate like any other venture capitalist, and that if a firm didn't get his money, it would just look for another one. As a VC, Tim would never have the same influence as his listeners, who wrote to him with moving tales of personal change. Daily routines. The individuals the book portrays have a tendency to be very goal-oriented and disciplined. These are some subjects for personal habit guidance. Doing, not knowing. Do you have an obsession with picking up new strategies yet struggle to stick with them? Recognize that action, not information, is the key to success. If more information was the answer, then we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs, writes author Derek Sivers. Tony Robbins, author and speaker. You are not a master because of an infographic. It doesn't matter what you know. What counts is what you constantly do. Artist Chuck Close. Don't think you have to wait to start creating anything in order to get the ideal concept. Most likely, all you're doing is restricting yourself. Professionals merely get to work. Amateurs just wait for inspiration. Working will open doors for you that would remain hidden if you were to sit and ponder about it. Naval Ravikant, an investor and entrepreneur, says that free knowledge can be found all over the internet. Less common is the motivation to get it. Establish a habit with a little prod. Do you want to read a book a week for eternity, meditate for 30 minutes every day, or shed 50 pounds? Perhaps they are too lofty of aspirations. If you take on too much at first, you may give up and feel discouraged. Rather, attempt a single modest action. Nobody is ever too busy or too tired to do one little task. One effective tiny action gives you the momentum you need to become a habit. Matt Mullenweg, the creator of WordPress, made a commitment to do 1 push-up before night in order to become in shape. Mung Tan, the author of Search Inside Yourself and a former Google employee, advises taking only 1 deliberate breath each day. Music producer Rick Rubin advises artists who find it difficult to create to compose just 1 word. Could they muster up the strength to write a single word?
Enhancing your areas of deficit. A large portion of personal growth is recognizing your shortcomings and taking conscious steps to strengthen them.
It might be challenging to identify your areas of weakness, since by definition, it's tough to admit when you're not excellent at anything. Go beyond yourself. You could probably solve someone else's issue if they came to you with the same one. However, you are unable to see that issue inside yourself. Imagine yourself in 10 years. What would you learn from that person? Think of your greatest counsel as guiding you. Goethe imagined his 5 closest friends sitting in various seats as he composed a book by isolating himself in a hotel room. Get the drive to address your areas of weakness after you've identified them. People often make justifications like, "It wasn't that bad in the past," or "It will get better in the future," to avoid facing their shortcomings. Answer the following questions about your vulnerabilities in order to face this. Consider the self-limiting ideas that are preventing you from reaching your full potential.
What has the belief previously cost you? What has cost you and other individuals you care about? Imagine and experience this viscerally. Experience the sights, sounds, and feelings. What future costs will the belief cause you and the people you care about? Consider the events that will transpire in a year, 5 years, and 10 years. Experience the sights, sounds, and feelings. You are forced to face the true consequences of your misbehavior by going through this exercise.
Ideas and originality. Whatever your line of work, you may probably stand to gain from increasing your creativity and productivity. Here are some tips for coming up with more creative ideas, spotting the finest ones, and acting upon them. To get good ideas, make a lot of bad ideas. Do you find it difficult to come up with just one great idea and prevent yourself from considering less than ideal ones? You have set the bar too high. Invest your time on brainstorming several concepts, even if they are absurd. It's not about how many hits you get in the end, but about how many brilliant ideas you have. James Altucher, a writer, has a daily goal of generating 10 ideas. These don't have to be company ideas. They might revolve around topics like 10 ways I can solve a problem I have, 10 ridiculous inventions, or 10 ways I can save time. Malcolm Gladwell, the author, generates as many ideas as he can, examines them closely, then discards them. The ideas that cannot be killed are worthwhile to pursue. A lot of authors deny the existence of writer's block. The alchemist author Paulo Coelho claims that he maintains the discipline of writing his way out, even in the absence of inspiration. How to generate thoughts. Pose the foolish questions. These force you to see circumstances differently. Gimlet Media founder Alex Blumberg. Fundamental questions go unanswered in significant tales. Similar to the question posed before the Great Recession of 2008. Why are banks lending money to individuals who can't pay it back? Place yourself in a setting that will expose you to as many new concepts, issues, and people as possible. If what you're working on seems logical to most people, you may not be thinking creatively or innovatively enough. Challenge common knowledge and consider dumb ideas. Futurists Jim Dator and Alvin Toffler assert that it is much more important to be inventive than correct, and that every meaningful prediction about the future should first seem absurd. Investor and entrepreneur Mark Andreessen. You don't need to know a secret that nobody else does to conduct creative work. It is true that you have to have a belief that not many others hold. Testing concepts. How do you identify the best ideas after you have a ton of them? You're not always the greatest judge of your own thoughts. You're not likely to locate the greatest on your own. You need external validation of your thoughts, and concept is excellent if it makes it through the trial by fire. You've just saved a ton of time if it doesn't. Ben Horowitz, Mark Andreessen's co-founder, helps him develop his ideas. They simply beat the shit out of it whenever someone brings in a deal. Even if the concept is sound, they make themselves tear it apart. Finally, if they continue to think it's a good idea in the end, it has passed the torture test. Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, gauges his employees' resilience by seeing whether they challenge the plan that has been presented to them. The greatest individuals make recommendations for changes to the plan based on their knowledge, rather than accepting it exactly as it is. The military assembles red teams of individuals whose job it is to undermine the plans in order to oppose them. Commercial approaches. Many of the giants we spoke with are entrepreneurs in one way or another. They often do this by starting their own companies or by working for themselves as writers, performers, or media makers. These are the giants' best advices for launching and expanding a profitable company. 1,000 sincere admirers. You don't need to be a worldwide celebrity or have millions of followers in order to succeed. Alternatively, all you need is 1,000 genuine followers, a notion made famous by Kevin Kelly, the founding executive editor of Wired. A fan who will buy anything you produce is the definition of a real fan. Real fans become your primary source of revenue and the driving force behind regular fans' marketing. You may be certain that you're providing solutions for a legitimate group of individuals if you can attract actual admirers. Create art that will thrill your 1,000 real admirers, not 100,000 uninterested viewers. Be true to yourself. Authenticity was lauded by many giants, particularly in the entertainment industry. People are drawn to authenticity and connection, so be yourself, and you'll meet people who like you just the way you are. Be yourself, and don't be scared to defy society's norms or common sense. Comedy comedian Whitney Cummings discovered that sharing her humiliating stories with her audience helped them relate to her and experience catharsis. TV personality Glenn Beck. A caller accused Glenn Beck of being Mr. Perfect early in his radio broadcast. Beck spoke about his history as an alcoholic and his worst blunders for 15 minutes. After realizing that people are desperate for something genuine, he changed his mind about his career ending. Commercial strategies. Consider 10 times larger rather than just 10% more. You have to start from scratch when you expand 10 times. You're in a new place by yourself, not in competition with everyone else vying for the same 10%. Avoid going into a highly competitive field. Companies lose money due to intense competition. It is not good to fail. Although it may seem apparent, embracing failure has become a typical way of thinking among digital firms. Failure, on the other hand, hurts and ought to be avoided. Investor and founder Mark Andreessen believes it's too late to turn around a failing business. A too simple and overpriced choice. Rather, take the time to figure it out and do it well. You should charge for the goods you sell. In order to achieve broad penetration and volume, the common thinking among entrepreneurs is to price your product cheap or even free. Nevertheless, this results in issues with not having enough money for marketing and sales to boost the growth engine. If your product is free, you have no idea how much you can charge for it later. However, those who pay for your product are evidence that it is excellent. Carry out swiftly. Why can't you do this in 6 months if you have a 10-year plan? Queries Peter Thiel. Contentment and mentality. Clearly, achieving your objectives and being productive are not the only significant aspects of life. For Titans, happiness and emotional control are 2 more crucial aspects of success. Be appreciative of things. The Titans were seldom the ruthless, take-no-prisoners sort of successful people. Instead, they often took stock of their life and expressed gratitude for where they had ended up. According to Tony Robbins, being grateful keeps you from experiencing fear or anger. He meditates on his blessings first thing in the morning. In a 5-minute diary at the end of the day, Tim Ferriss suggests listing 3 new things for which you are thankful. Consider little things, like an old connection that really benefited you, something amazing that you witnessed, or anything straightforward that you can see, rather than repeating the same things, like your health. Author Seth Godin. Do you obsess about every instance in which someone has wronged or rejected you? It makes more sense to record all of the instances in which you took a chance and it turned out to be successful. Your story is something you can write. Handling unfavorable feelings. Fear. In several of his interviews, Tim Ferriss asks, "What would you advise your younger self?" The most typical reply was, "Calm down, don't worry, everything will work out." You have 3 choices in life. You may choose to fix it, accept it, or let it go. It is not a good idea to have one preference but not pursue it. This is similar to wanting to leave a situation but not taking any action to do so. Fury. People imitate your conduct. This is a leadership proverb from the Navy SEALs. Calm is contagious. They will also remain calm if you do. They will panic as well if you do. Matt Mullenweg is an excellent example of how getting upset won't help things when faced with a crisis. A giant related a tale about his encounter with boxer Evander Holyfield before one of his major bouts. Holyfield dismissed the Titan's concerns that he was interfering with his pre-fight preparation. He was aware that nothing would change in the moments leading up to a battle since he had done all in his power to prepare for it. Holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal while waiting to throw it at someone, goes a Buddhist proverb. Don't ignore or stifle your anger when it arises. Express your clear acknowledgement of it. This aids in the problem's resolution. Skepticism. According to media presenter Jason Silva, having jaded or cynical views is akin to being dead. You view the world through glass darkly, nothing amazes you, and you feel like you've seen it all before. Asking more useful questions. How would I spend my $10 million if I had it to myself? Is $10 million really all I need to live this kind of life now? Are you suffering through a terrible career in the hopes of retiring and finding nirvana? Because life is brief, make the most of it by designing the life you want now, rather than postponing it for 20 to 40 years, when, God forbid, a terrible sickness or accident may cut it short. Realizing your dream life might be surprisingly simple. Tim Ferriss was pushed to the brink of his endurance while developing brain quicken, feeling stuck in his hyper-caffeinated workaholic state of mind. He paused to consider the type of lifestyle he really desired. Tim did some fast math and found that his goal lifestyle was significantly less expensive than he had thought. Rather than money, what he was lacking was time and flexibility. This inspired him to completely restructure his life even before he received his $10 million. What would happen if I took a 48-hour break from my regular routine? It might be necessary to reverse what you're doing if you're stuck and not achieving the desired result. The impact is minimal if you do the opposite for only 48 hours. At worst, you fail and return to your regular schedule. In the best-case scenario, you discover a whole new, effective method. Tim wasn't hitting his sales targets when he started out as a computer product salesperson. Feeling helpless, he observed the actions of his fellow salesmen and made the decision to take a different approach. Tim chose to call outside of the 9-to-5 hours while other people worked 9 to 5. He discovered that he could get through to CEOs and avoid their assistants, who were not working during regular business hours. Do I have to return anything the same way if I lose it? Have you ever lost an opportunity or an investment? The first thing you want to do is try to get it back the same manner you lost it. However, this could be ineffective and disregards the worth of your time. Tim Ferriss lost money during the Great Recession in 2008 while owning a home in San Jose. Then, selling would entail a $150,000 dropped. His buddies suggested that he rent the home until the property's worth increased. Tim was unhappy as a result of all the problems associated with property management after taking the advice. Rather than that, he understood that his time, not money, was the actual value here. He might be able to recover the $150,000 over the course of 5 years by watching over his residence. However, he could be able to increase his brand and company by $500,000 with the same amount of time and effort. Tim made the choice to sell the home. Overview. Tim Ferriss examines the routines and values of 101 successful individuals, including tech investors, business owners, sportsmen, and entertainers, in his 707-page book, Tools of Titans. The book's thesis is that you may achieve success too if you adopt the behaviors and mindsets of those who achieve it in the manner that you want. The book is quite comprehensive, addressing many different facets of being affluent, intelligent, and healthy. Finding the topics in the book that most connect with you is more important than trying to read everything that is addressed. The author observes that various readers choose rather distinct takeaways from the book as their most crucial teachings. Spend some time thinking over the book's provocative questions if you want to get more out of it. The book's focus on action over knowledge is one of its main themes. Consider what you've learned for a moment. As Derek Sivers states, if more information was the answer, then we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs. Consider the meta level. How might one acquire the mentality of the characters in the book? Simultaneously, be conscious of the moments when you ignore or skip over something. Does this point to a serious issue you're hesitant to investigate? Motivation and objectives. We'll begin by discussing the cornerstones of success, such as goal setting and developing a brave attitude. Set goals you can see. Why are you pedaling so hard if you have no idea where you're going? A lot of titans make their long-term objectives visible, which makes it simpler to understand why they're battling. Since you can say no to things that won't help you reach your objectives, it'll become simpler to concentrate. Particular advice from giants. According to Arnold Schwarzenegger, the work in between is simpler when there is a clear understanding of the end result. Since you understand why you're pushing so hard, it makes it easier for you to endure the agony and hard effort required to achieve your objective. Tony Robbins visualizes the 3 things he wants to accomplish that day during the last portion of his daily meditation. To stay motivated, he experiences the feelings viscerally and visualizes the successful end. Creator of Dilbert Scott Adams chooses a daily objective and jots it down 15 times. He discovers that this heightens serendipity. It's as if the world offers chances for you to succeed. More practically, he thinks this concentration aids your brain in identifying chances that align with your goals and eliminating those that are unnecessary, in the same way that you can still clearly hear someone calling your name in a noisy environment. Dreams and objectives are often confused. Something you daydream about that will never come true is called a dream. A goal is something you prepare for, strive for, and accomplish. Show courage. Have courage. Do you have a lofty objective that you'd want to pursue but don't feel prepared for? It's probable that you've placed unnatural limits on yourself. Several titans discussed overcoming barriers that they had set for themselves or that society had imposed. Recognize that every titan you look up to began where you are right now, facing really difficult challenges. The titans were different in that they had the guts to overcome these challenges. Here are a few sayings and anecdotes on courage. Steve Jobs. Everything that surrounds you in life was created by individuals who lacked intelligence in comparison to you. Additionally, you have the power to alter it, have an impact on it, and create original works of art that are useful to others. Don't be afraid to do something you're not qualified to do, advises Dan Carlin. Thiel Capital's managing director, Eric Weinstein, believes that a setback shouldn't be the end of an opportunity. Rather, it needs to set off a different line of thought. How might it be achievable and circumvented? Adam Gazzaley is a neuroscientist who likes to do research that others may deem absurd or even foolish. You have a limited life to make an impression, and the way you do it is not by living in fear of failing. Brené Brown, a writer, challenges herself to put bravery above comfort. Born Eric Bishop, entertainer Jamie Foxx began his career in an improv theater. The management would always choose the females to obtain variety, even if there would be 5 ladies and 100 guys waiting to perform. Jamie chose a unisex name in response, figuring it would increase his chances of being chosen. The 10% challenge, as proposed by marketer Noah Kagan, is to go to the counter and request 10% off your coffee. You have to become comfortable making requests and putting yourself out there. It's often that you need to do what you're most terrified of doing. The fear exercise. Tim Ferriss offers a fear exercise that you might perform if you're ever frightened to accomplish anything. Consider the modification you want to implement first. What could possibly go wrong if you made the change you're frightened of? Imagine the scene in crystal clear, vibrant detail. How awful would this turn out to be? How long-lasting would this harm be? How would you make your way back and heal if this had happened? From 0% to 100%, What is the ultimate worst-case scenario's likelihood? What is the best-case scenario now that you have seen the worst-case scenario? What would be a decent, realistic result? In what ways might this improve your life? Now consider your life as it might have been had you not made the change. In 6 months, how does life seem if nothing changes? 3 years? Is this the most contented existence possible? Or would the remorse poison you? For what legitimate reason are you delaying this change? You will probably discover after doing this exercise that the worst-case scenario is not at all permanently devastating. You'll be able to go back to your previous life quite fine, even if you fail. In the end, you could find that, apart from your personal anxiety, you don't have any compelling reasons not to make the adjustment. Not much is needed to get started. Don't let fear prevent you from pursuing your goals because you think you lack something essential, such as the ideal network of friends, ideas, money, or anything. These are just justifications. Most likely, you have enough to begin going already. Don't be scared to punch above your weight class, even if you think you're in a poor position. Find chances that you are not qualified for and speak with individuals that are higher up than you. Just remember to listen, learn, and strive to be helpful. Chris Sacca, an investor, attended meetings at Google, even though he wasn't invited, and volunteered to assist by taking notes. Tim Ferriss, the book's author, attended a trade show and set up shop in a lounge where other bloggers congregated to promote his first book, The 4-Hour Workweek. He didn't sell his book. Instead, he asked a lot of stupid questions in an attempt to understand the secrets of success. The Canvas strategy, as proposed by author Ryan Holiday, calls on you to locate canvases for other individuals to paint on. You should clear the path and assist others in doing their best job. You shouldn't be concerned about getting exploited. Look for the menial tasks that no one enjoys doing, and make it a point to always try to assist others. Share your thoughts with others. New England Patriots football coach Bill Belichick began his career as a volunteer, doing menial tasks for the coaching staff, including watching game tape analysis. Adam Robinson, a co-founder of the Princeton Review, advises seeing every conversation as an opportunity to make the other person happy. This detracts from your own actions. Try using this strategy in investment meetings or employment interviews. Realize that your lowly position is only temporary, so if your ego gets in the way and you don't want to put in the hard work, you may as well make the most of it and set yourself up for future success. Being firm. Grit and determination are necessary to get through difficult times. How can you be tougher if you're not already tough? It's that simple. Be harsh if that's how you want to be. Make the difficult choice when you make your next move. General Stanley McChrystal of the U.S. Army offers some advice. Overcome your own expectations of yourself by exerting more effort. You'll discover strength you were unaware you had. Embrace the company of others who have similar challenges and work through obstacles with them. You'll discover that thereafter, you're even more dedicated to achieving your goals. Seneca, an ancient Stoic philosopher, advises giving up all conveniences and living simply for 3 days. Examples of this may include sleeping in a sleeping bag or consuming just oatmeal. Your comfort threshold will be adjusted as a result, and even the tiniest bites of food will taste great thereafter. Practice. Face your fear. Try this fear exercise if you have anxiety while taking action. Which life change is it that you really want to make but are hesitant to take on? What could possibly go wrong if you made the change you're frightened of? Imagine the scene in crystal clear, vibrant detail. How long-lasting would this harm be? How would you make your way back and heal if this had happened? From 0% to 100%, what is the ultimate worst-case scenario's likelihood? What is the best-case scenario now that you have seen the worst-case scenario? What would be a decent, realistic result? In what ways might this improve your life? Career and work habits. You must work hard to achieve your objectives once you've determined what they are. These are some tips to help you maximize the little time you have to be more productive and advance. You must pay attention. Do you think life is too busy? It's not required. You definitely need to narrow down your ambitions if you feel like you're going really quickly, but not really getting anywhere in life. Though they don't have any extra time, the titans in this book have hundreds of times more chances than the average person. This implies that in order to achieve their objectives, individuals must apply a laser-sharp attention to the possibilities. Let's look first at the reasons why individuals often lose concentration in favor of being busy. Tim Ferriss. It goes against common sense that busy people are often indolent. You are a lazy thinker if you attempt to accomplish everything, since you are not putting in the effort to identify the few crucial tasks that are important. Keeping occupied is another common strategy to steer clear of unpleasant situations. Author and cartoonist Tim Kreider. Without it, people are forced to face existential concerns for which they have no satisfactory solutions, which is why they are busy. Ultimately, our actions are meaningless in the greater scheme of things. People find this unsettling. However, if you have a hectic schedule and are in demand all day long, your life cannot be meaningless. Here are some tips for defining your objectives after that. William McCaskill, a philosopher. Taking the effort to identify your life's major objectives is worthwhile. You may find yourself spending 30 minutes a day deciding what to have for breakfast, lunch, and supper. It corresponds to over 3% of the day. If you choose to use that time to choose your objectives instead, you would have been occupied with life decisions for almost 2 full working years. Producer of music Cascade. Picture yourself with a glass jar filled with large rocks, stones, and sand next to it. Large boulders cannot fit in if the sand and pebbles are added first, since they take up all the available space. However, if you add the large rocks, pebbles, and sand in order, everything fits. Similarly, if you prioritize the little things on your to-do list, you won't have time for the important things. When assessing prospects, author Derek Sivers says, "If it's not a hell yes. If an opportunity doesn't grab his attention right away, it's probably not going to be very beneficial to his objectives. Thus, he should pass on it." According to investor and entrepreneur Naval Ravikant, desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. Source. As a result, Naval Ravikant chooses his goals wisely and refrains from having many major desires at once. Having lots of unmet desires may cause worry and disappointment, but focus helps you avoid these feelings. Chris Sacca is an investor in tech startups, yet he consciously chose to live in Tahoe rather than San Francisco. He now has more mental flexibility and control over his to-do list as a result. When creating objectives, specifically choose a small number of them and make them explicit. Steer clear of these distractions from focus. In the story, Buridan's ass, a hungry and thirsty donkey is positioned halfway between hay and water. The donkey is unable to decide, so it passes away. Similarly, don't work on any of the directions at once and don't make any progress at all. Your to-do list shouldn't be defined by other people. According to Chris Sacca, everyone can add items to your to-do list via your email inbox. Author Maria Popova. Requests from people will increase as you become successful. You need to safeguard the quality of your job, since this puts it in jeopardy. The idea that you can do a lot in moderation, such as, "I'll limit myself to just 5 hours a week," or "I'll dabble just a bit in investing," should be avoided. If success in the field demands all or nothing work, and you are unable to give it your all, you should give up on it entirely. Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, need a single convincing reason before he will take a chance. It will probably be a waste of effort if the explanation is a combination of many little, unsatisfactory reasons. He uses going to an industry convention as an example. Steer clear of a culture of cortisol. Being busy and being afraid of missing out are prioritized so highly that you may live a life filled with constant anxiety. Your life truly shouldn't consist of numerous crises. Eliminate the 20% of things that account for 80% of your misery and concentrate on your key objectives. Selecting tasks to complete. It might be challenging to choose what to concentrate on and base your career on in a world full with possibilities. These are some wise words from the giants. Become a triple or double danger. A lot of individuals want to be the greatest in the world at something, which is akin to becoming a good enough basketball player to get into the NBA. However, there is fierce competition and little chance of success in this. Rather, you may effortlessly excel in 2 or more areas and then blend them to great advantage. Entrepreneur and investor Mark Andreessen concurs, listing 5 abilities: communication, management, sales, finance, and internationalization, that may enhance any job. Put in a job where you can't be simply replaced. This is your chance to have an original influence. Tim Ferriss considered becoming a full-time venture capitalist, VC, while he was developing his following around self-improvement. He was pushed aside by investor Kamal Ravikant, who said he would operate like any other venture capitalist, and that if a firm didn't get his money, it would just look for another one. As a VC, Tim would never have the same influence as his listeners, who wrote to him with moving tales of personal change. Contest the need of a formal education. Consider investing the tuition money you would have paid for education in something that would help you advance more quickly. Tim Ferriss had a passion for business, but he chose to spend that $120,000 in startups rather than get an MBA. He would have used the money for tuition anyway, so he was emotionally okay with losing it all. However, he obtained invaluable experience working for construction businesses that he would not have received in school. Similarly, might you use the thousands of dollars you would have paid for tuition to implement a significant life alteration, such as taking on more hours to work on a side business or hiring consultants? It's acceptable to avoid hotspots. Are you not in the center of attention in your field or career? This is a common justification for failing or never starting. I can't do what I want to do because I live outside of the city where everything is happening. It is not concerning to be outside the epicenter. You may really benefit from this in order to make up for it. Chris Sacca, an investor, lives outside of Silicon Valley at a Tahoe chalet. This, he discovered, made it easier for him to concentrate on his priorities and tune out the clamor. It also provided him a place to hang out that was sought after by business associates and friends. Snowboarder Shaun White, an Olympic medalist, says that while most snowboarders train in snowy areas like Vermont or Colorado, the bitter cold and mountain hikes may deplete your motivation. By settling in Southern California, he made up for the lack of snow with a greater zest for life. Richard Betts, a master sommelier, was choosing where to start his profession. In Tucson, Arizona, he discovered 2 highly recognized cooks. He viewed this as a chance to acquire higher than usual access and learn more quickly since not many people desire to go to Tucson. Plan your work to help you learn from mistakes. Some individuals are concerned that they will lose time and achieve nothing if they attempt something and fail. However, things don't have to turn out this way. Arrange your task such that you may fail and yet learn a great deal in the process. On a whim, Tim Ferriss launched a podcast because he thought that even if it didn't work out, he would still get experience in audio production and get to interview interesting people. Creator of Dilbert Scott Adams. Consider creating systems or habits rather than aiming for particular objectives. For instance, instead of trying to shed 10 pounds, create a strategy for learning how to eat healthier and work out in a manner that you like. After his first attempt at making a movie, 4 Rooms, director Robert Rodriguez was inspired by the actors to create Spy Kids, and he used a similar storyline in Sin City. Even if you fail, remember that it's a chance to improve and learn. Robert Rodriguez. It's better to train now rather than fail when the stakes are high. If you fail while the stakes are low, that's terrific. Jocko Willink, a writer and Navy SEAL, says good after every mistake. Not given a promotion? All right. More time to improve and give it another go. Your startup was not financed. All right? You get to retain more of the business and make decisions for yourself. Lose a match that you entered? All right. You discovered a flaw to overcome. Reduce the complexity of your issue. Does achieving your goal feel like an impossible amount of work? I believe you're overanalyzing things. Rather, spend some time considering how to make your issue simpler. Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, has said that the goal of business strategy should be to solve the most useful, not the hardest, issue. Lynn Gordon, a toy designer, was struggling to find customers for her creations. Rather, she turned her artistic talents toward the book publishing sector. Her 52 activity card deck series proved to be a smash. Glitch mob musician Justin Beretta, what would this look like if it were easy? Is a question he asks himself when he's stuck. Although the text isn't quite clear on how to use this, the following are some suggestions. Find a method to utilize your abilities that will provide you far more leverage or greater outcomes, rather than competing in your present field. Address the simpler issue to open up a larger market. Find a technique to do the same task with the same amount of work and get 10 times the reward. Workplace strategies. Here are some other career and employment strategies that the giants advocate. Consider filing for email bankruptcy if your inbox is overflowing with unopened emails. You notify your contacts that if an email is really urgent, they should send it again since you won't be checking it till today. This may help you feel less guilty and stressed, but make sure you only do this after you've formed healthy email habits to avoid having to file for bankruptcy again. Be in the company of those who achieve more achievement than you. Although it won't be as easy on your ego as hanging out with less successful individuals, this will nonetheless increase your success. 3 persons in particular should be kept an eye on. A senior that you want to imitate. A colleague who excels in the field more than you. A subordinate who does the same task as you, but more effectively. Practice increasing your attention span. If it seems like you have too much on your plate, focus on the few things that really important. What hectic job do you do every day that doesn't help you achieve your objectives? Why do you devote time to this demanding work? Common responses include a preference for the sense of neededness or a want to sidestep more troubling inquiries. Which 2 or 3 life objectives do you most wish to accomplish? Will you commit to these life objectives with 90% of your time? To do this, what would you have to give up? Individual practices. The individuals the book portrays have a tendency to be very goal-oriented and disciplined. These are some subjects for personal habit guidance. Not information, but action. Do you have an obsession with picking up new strategies yet struggle to stick with them? Recognize that action, not information, is the key to success. Here are some sayings and anecdotes about acting. If more information was the answer, then we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs, writes author Derek Sivers. Tony Robbins, author and speaker. You are not a master because of an infographic. It doesn't matter what you know. What counts is what you constantly do. Artist Chuck Close. Don't think you have to wait to start creating anything in order to get the ideal concept. Most likely, all you're doing is restricting yourself. Professionals merely get to work. Amateurs just wait for inspiration. Working will open doors for you that would remain hidden if you were to sit and ponder about it. Casey Neistat, a YouTuber. Being the most competent, talented, or handsome person is never a guarantee. But if you put in the effort, you can always compete. Naval Ravikant, an investor and entrepreneur, says that free knowledge can be found all over the internet. Less common is the motivation to get it. Filmmaker Rob Rodriguez. Rob began a comic strip while attending college. He would stare at the wall in an attempt to obtain inspiration, but he soon discovered that simply starting to sketch and honing it would provide much greater results. You will never take action if you wait for an epiphany. Actor and comedian B.J. Novak, The Office, says, When you're in a high-energy state, commit to future actions so you can't back out. In order to prevent them from pulling out after a poor performance, he advises aspiring comedians to reserve their first week of performances well in advance. Everybody has a beginning point. Check out the early podcasts of Joe Rogan's program, the blogs of Tim Ferriss or Ramit Sethi, or the pilots of popular TV series if you need some bravery. You don't need to start any better than your rough drafts to be among the giants of today. They didn't start any better. How to beat procrastination. Do you struggle with putting things off? Anxiety related to the work might be the reason. Tim Ferriss compels himself to write down the 3 things that are worrying him the most in order to counteract this. After that, he asks himself, would I be happy with my day if this was all I managed to do today? Will doing this make the other tasks less significant or simpler to complete later? If so, he sets aside 2 or 3 hours to concentrate on one of them. Read more to learn about the concept that typically what terrifies you the most is what's most essential. Consume that frog. Pay attention to the process, not the end. Setting high standards for oneself might make it difficult to put in the effort but not see results. After that, it's simple to get demotivated and quit working. All you have to do is put in the effort to get through the tough times. When you make a commitment to a long-term objective, you only have to make and follow one decision. Work hard. Making several little choices on what to do every day may be tiresome and lead to making mistakes. This is simpler than having to make these judgments. Coach Christopher Summer of U.S. Gymnastics. Come in, get the job done, and go home. Establish a habit with a little prod. Do you want to read a book a week for eternity, meditate for 30 minutes every day, or shed 50 pounds? Perhaps they are too lofty of aspirations. If you take on too much at first, you may give up and feel discouraged. Rather, attempt a single, modest action. Nobody is ever too busy or too tired to do one little task. One effective, tiny action gives you the momentum you need to become a habit. Matt Mullenweg, the creator of WordPress, made a commitment to do 1 push-up before night in order to become in shape. Mung Tan, the author of Search Inside Yourself and a former Google employee, advises taking only 1 deliberate breath each day. Music producer Rick Rubin advises artists who find it difficult to create to compose just 1 word. Could they muster up the strength to write a single word? The idea behind this strategy is that action is extremely difficult to do when you have a huge objective in mind. Should you stumble, you'll feel ashamed of yourself, which will start a negative feedback loop and halt your advancement. Rather, reduce your behavior modification to the smallest feasible element. Make a commitment to completing that 1 little task. It's not as horrible as you would have imagined. Read Atomic Habits to learn more about this concept. Everyday activities. At the start and conclusion of each day, a few giants spoke about their routines. Morning customs. Making the most of your morning sets you up for success throughout the day. Tony Robbins modifies his physiological makeup to prepare himself for the appropriate mental state. After taking a quick dip into cold water, he either goes for a quick walk or does fast breathing exercises. He concludes by reflecting on his intentions for the day and his things for which he is thankful. Tim Ferriss follows 5 morning routines. Organize your bed. Starting the day with a simple job motivates you to take on more. And you can make your bed, no matter how awful your day is. You feel somewhat in charge now. See our synopsis of the book, Make Your Bed, for additional elaboration on this concept. Think. Perform 5 to 10 repetitions of a physical workout, such as squats or push-ups. To make titanium tea, combine the following: aged black tea from Pu'er Green, tea from Dragon Well. Shaved ginger and turmeric with 1 to 2 teaspoons of coconut oil. Fill up his 5-minute logbook. Please respond to each of the following 3 questions. I am appreciative of. What would be the perfect way to end today? Affirmations every day. I'm journaling every day, according to author Julia Cameron in her book The Artist's Way, is like using spiritual windshield wipers because it helps you view the world more clearly after you put your jumbled ideas on paper. Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, finds that in the morning, his mind is at its most clear. Therefore, he works for 60 minutes on the challenge he set for himself the previous day. Jocko Willink, a writer and former Navy SEAL, gets up around 4:45 a.m. As a warfighter, he believed this offered him a psychological edge over his adversary, since Jocko would be preparing for their confrontation while his adversary was still asleep. Final activities of the day. Reid Hoffman follows Thomas Edison's advice to never go to sleep without a request to your subconscious by giving his mind a nightly assignment, such as a challenge with corporate strategy or a puzzle involving product design. He allows his subconscious to function. Tim Ferriss keeps an end-of-day notebook in which he responds to 2 questions, similar to his morning journal. Which 3 incredible events occurred today? How might I have improved upon today? Make sure you finish the workday with high-quality work. Avoid making the mistake of generating subpar work at the end of the day. To begin with, a strong momentum the next day. Ernest Hemingway would often cease his writing sessions in the middle of a phrase or flow. Interaction. Here are some pointers for effective interpersonal communication. Express your desires to others rather than your dislikes. Say to them, "Stand up straight," rather than, "Stop slouching." Get used to going first. People are eager to talk to you, but you have to start the conversation. Establish eye contact first. Greet them with a smile first. You won't believe the reaction. Show vulnerability in order to get vulnerability. Tell them something personal about how you can connect to a difficulty they're facing or how you're handling pressure. This will facilitate communication and enable them to feel your grief as well. Brown. Most people believe that vulnerability comes after gaining trust, while vulnerability precedes earning trust. Just listening to others might be helpful. Sometimes it's better to simply be there and listen than to provide advice. It is impossible for Tim Ferriss to answer every question that is posed to him. But when he does, it's usually in public and with an indication that he's answering questions from the public, like answering tweets, for example. Often, for his audience, it's enough to just feel like he's paying attention. Strengthening your weaknesses. A large portion of personal growth is recognizing your shortcomings and taking conscious steps to strengthen them. Assess your weaknesses. It might be challenging to identify your areas of weakness since, by definition, it's tough to admit when you're not excellent at anything. The advice's overarching theme is to step back and take a more critical look at yourself. Start by imagining that you are not typical. In order to counteract our inclination to believe that we are better than average in most things, Derek Sivers constantly reminds himself of this. Go beyond yourself. You could probably solve someone else's issue if they came to you with the same one. It's hard to identify and resolve an issue when you are the one experiencing it. Imagine yourself in 10 years. What would you learn from that person? This might be a useful technique to picture the best version of yourself and then point out the ways that you deviate from that ideal version of yourself now. Think of your greatest counsel as guiding you. Goethe imagined his 5 closest friends sitting in various seats as he composed a book by isolating himself in a hotel room. Jocko Willink, a writer and former Navy SEAL, often feels like he's just watching someone else do a task. As a result, he gains objectivity and is able to observe the world without the filter of his emotions. Address your weaknesses. Get the drive to address your areas of weakness after you've identified them. People often make justifications like, "It wasn't that bad in the past," or "It will get better in the future," to avoid facing their shortcomings. Tony Robbins created the Dickens process in order to address this. Called after Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Carol, it makes you imagine a horrible future in order to drive you to stay away from it. Consider the self-limiting ideas that are preventing you from reaching your full potential. What has the belief previously cost you? What has it previously cost you and other individuals you care about? Imagine and experience this viscerally. Experience the sights, sounds, and feelings. What is the belief now costing you and the people you love? Listen to the noises. Observe the sights. Experience the feelings. What future costs will the belief cause you and the people you care about? Consider the events that will transpire in a year, 5 years, and 10 years. Experience the sights, sounds, and feelings. You are forced to face the true consequences of your misbehavior by going through this exercise. Then, you have just 3 choices for dealing with your weakness. Either strengthen it, get rid of the task that depends on it, or assign it to someone else who is more skilled than you. To learn more about accepting your shortcomings and creating a strategy to overcome them, see Principles by Ray Dalio. Ideas and originality. Whatever your line of work, you may probably stand to gain from increasing your creativity and productivity. This is a collection of tips on how to come up with more creative ideas, recognize the finest ones, and implement them. To get good ideas, make a lot of bad ideas. Do you find it difficult to come up with just one great idea and prevent yourself from considering less than ideal ones? You have set the bar too high. Invest your time on brainstorming several concepts, even if they are absurd. It's not about how many but about how many brilliant ideas you have. Your idea muscle gets more work out the more ideas you come up with. Many individuals reaffirm this notion. James Altucher, a writer, has a daily goal of generating 10 ideas. These don't have to be company ideas. They might revolve around topics like 10 ways I can solve a problem I have, 10 ridiculous inventions, or 10 ways I can save time. Malcolm Gladwell, the author, generates as many ideas as he can, examines them closely, then discards them. The ideas that cannot be killed are worthwhile to pursue. A lot of authors deny the existence of writer's block. The alchemist author Paulo Coelho claims that he maintains the discipline of writing his way out, even in the absence of inspiration. IBM's sales team was very successful, and they achieved this despite having modest sales targets. This helped salesmen overcome their fear of answering the phone. Once they made their first sale, they gained momentum and made the next ones. Author Cheryl Strayed advises authors to write for 2 pages straight without pausing, for editing or any other reason. You may gather writing prompts, such, write about something you'll never get back, or write about why you couldn't do it.
How to generate thoughts. How do you really come up with ideas when you know that's what you should be doing?
These are some recommendations. Pose the foolish questions. These force you to see circumstances differently. Gimlet Media founder Alex Blumberg. Fundamental questions go unanswered in significant tales. Similar to the question posed before the Great Recession of 2008, why are banks lending money to individuals who can't pay it back? The father of author Malcolm Gladwell lacked any intellectual insecurities. He would inquire about apparent things without hesitation. Luis von Ahn, the founder of Duolingo, had an advisor who would often comment, "I don't understand what you're saying." This makes the other person think about how the listener may not be fully understanding the topic. Place yourself in a setting that will expose you to as many new concepts, issues, and people as possible. Examine past events in history. Eat the best works ever created rather than what is in style right now. For performers struggling to establish their voice, music producer Rick Rubin recommends listening to the 100 best albums ever released. How to visualize the future. If you are involved in any type of innovation-related activity, you probably want to develop for the future. How can you think beyond the box to generate novel concepts? When Titans talk about seeing the future, defying consensus is a recurring subject. The most significant shifts in the future could be something we don't now anticipate. You may not be thinking creatively or innovatively enough if the majority of people find what you're doing to be sensible. The following are the top sayings from Tools of Titans on creativity and pushing the envelope. Futurists Jim Dator and Alvin Toffler assert that it is much more important to be inventive than correct, and that every meaningful prediction about the future should first seem absurd. Investor and entrepreneur Marc Andreessen. You don't need to know a secret that nobody else does to conduct creative work. It is true that you have to have a belief that not many others hold. When 99% of people doubt you, you're either gravely wrong or about to make history, said founder Scott Belsky. You get paid for being right first, and to be first, you can't wait for consensus, says investor and entrepreneur Naval Ravikant. Brian Johnson, the creator of Braintree. What can you accomplish that people will remember 200, 400 years from now? Ernest Shackleton, the explorer of the Antarctic, is another person on his mind often. Johnson questions himself whether this is the riskiest project he has ever undertaken. Ideas for stress testing. How do you identify the best ideas after you have a ton of them? Comedy writers B.J. Novak and Scott Adams assess a concept's viability based on their physical responses. They know they have some excellent content if they experience endorphins or adrenaline. However, you're not always the greatest arbiter of your own opinions. It's improbable that you'll discover the ideal answer or be able to see everything on your own. You need external validation of your thoughts. It's an excellent concept if it makes it through the trial by fire. You've just saved a ton of time if it doesn't. Titans talk to others about how they come up with ideas. Ben Horowitz, Marc Andreessen's co-founder, helps him develop his ideas. They simply beat the shit out of it whenever someone brings in a deal. Even if the concept is sound, they make themselves tear it apart. Finally, if they continue to think it's a good idea in the end, it has passed the torture test. Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, gauges his employees' resilience by seeing whether they challenge the plan that has been presented to them. The greatest individuals make recommendations for changes to the plan based on their knowledge, rather than accepting it exactly as it is. Phil Libin, the inventor of Evernote, spoke to Elon Musk about his aspirations to go to Mars and expressed his excitement about the idea of doing so. When he later met Jeff Bezos, who was also interested in space travel, he told him that visiting Mars was foolish. Rather, once humanity arrived in space, they need simply only. Instead than just being on another planet, mining asteroids while living in zero gravity. The military assembles red teams of individuals whose job it is to undermine the plans in order to oppose them. Stephen Dubner, the author of Freakonomics. When assessing ideas, set aside your moral compass, since your values may skew your judgment. For instance, corporate avarice is not always the source of poor air quality. You will make mistakes in cognition and miss out on the greatest answers if you jump to conclusions. Share your thoughts. You'll likely have considerably more ideas than you have time to explore if you come up with a lot of them. Give out your thoughts rather than keeping them to yourself. Give them brilliant ideas and motivate them to pursue them. While the majority of people are unlikely to use them, some will, and they will all be appreciative of you. Kevin Kelly, the editor of Wired, uses this to screen out ideas that he ought to be working on. It might be something he should work on if he has an idea that he can't seem to get out of his brain, but also can't seem to give it away. 99% of Tim Ferriss's material is available for free, via his blog or podcast, for example. By doing this, he makes contacts that have led to far more beneficial possibilities, including investing in Shopify and Duolingo, two startups in their early stages. Marcelo Garcia, an MMA fighter, makes footage of his sparring sessions public, which is rare since it can reveal his tactics to rivals. If others are observing him, then they are playing his game, and he doesn't care since he knows he will become better at it. How to establish a company. Many of the giants we spoke with are entrepreneurs in one way or another. They often do this by starting their own companies or by working for themselves as writers, performers, or media makers. These are the giants' best advices for launching and expanding a profitable company. 1,000 sincere admirers. You don't need to be a worldwide celebrity or have millions of followers in order to succeed. Alternatively, all you need is 1,000 genuine followers, a notion made famous by Kevin Kelly, the founding executive editor of Wired. A fan who will buy anything you produce is the definition of a real fan. Real fans become your primary source of revenue and the driving force behind regular fans' marketing. You may be certain that you're providing solutions for a legitimate group of individuals if you can attract actual admirers. Create art that will thrill your 1,000 real admirers, not 100,000 uninterested viewers. Kurt Vonnegut, the author, advocated writing to please just one person, yourself. Rick Rubin, a music producer. The finest art is divisive. It's pushing the envelope and not appealing to the majority if half of the public finds it offensive. Investor Eric Weinstein. Being a well-known celebrity is overrated. There are more drawbacks than advantages. Rather, your goal is to become well-known among 2,000. Select individuals. Have absolute authenticity. Authenticity was lauded by many giants, particularly in the entertainment industry. People are drawn to authenticity and connection, so be yourself, and you'll meet people who like you just the way you are. Be yourself, and don't be scared to defy society's norms or common sense. Sayings and tales about being true to yourself. Investor Chris Sacca notes that he exclusively wears cowboy shirts in public and advises others to be your unapologetically weird self. Comedy comedian Whitney Cummings discovered that sharing her humiliating stories with her audience helped them relate to her and experience catharsis. Actor Seth Rogen began doing stand-up comedy as a teenager, attempting to mimic other comedians. He was advised by another comedian that he should speak about attempting to obtain his first hand job, as he was the only one there who could. Cato was a stoic senator in ancient Rome who deliberately eschewed a tunic and wore darker garments than usual. He received mockery as anticipated. His goal was to teach himself to feel embarrassed only by things that really deserved it. Andrew Zimmern is a food critic and TV host. He could have easily made fun of a Japanese restaurant's name, which translates to morning erections, in the TV show's premiere, but instead he remained true to himself and maintained decorum, which established the tone for the whole episode. Being authentically yourself takes a lot less labor. TV personality. Glenn Beck. A caller accused Glenn Beck of being Mr. Perfect early in his radio broadcast. Beck spoke about his history as an alcoholic and his worst blunders for 15 minutes. After realizing that people are desperate for something genuine, he changed his mind about his career ending. Josh Waitzkin, a world-class chess player. You have to embrace your quirkiness and grow from it. Hardcore History podcast host Dan Carlin. Don't own your mistakes. His producers said he was excessively loud and that the recording meter was maxed out when he first debuted on the radio. He responded that this was his style. Rather of attempting to be humorous straight away, filmmaker Jon Favreau, Iron Man the Lion King, suggests pursuing the truth. You'll discover humor along the way. Brian Johnson, the creator of Braintree, was an honest man in a field full of dishonest people. He began selling credit card processing door to door with the line, "We're the same as everyone else, except we're honest, transparent, and care about customer service." Little things can have a big impact. Small steps may make a big difference, particularly when developing a product or offering a service. People pay attention to the details. Because he always wears cowboy shirts in public, investor Chris Sacca has developed a distinct personal brand, a steady stream of media attention, and a look that no one can copy. Derek Sivers is an author and entrepreneur. He had fun with the shipping email when he started CD Baby in the 1990s. This small automatic piece of delight might spread word of mouth instead of just confirming. It cooed about how our world-renowned packing specialist lit a local artisan candle and a hush fell over the crowd as he put your CD into the finest gold-lined box that money can buy. Hipmunk, the travel search business founded by Reddit founder Alexis Ohanian, used error warnings in a similar manner. Travels that are too lengthy warn, why don't you just move there? While mistakes in date setting display the warning, we don't support trips to the past yet. If you enter the same destination for from and to, it will state, that's an awfully short trip. The maximum is 30 days. Josh Waitzkin, a chess player, believes that the small things build up to a significant amount. You're fostering sloppiness if you're not sustaining quality consistently. Make the most of the tiny moments, because there are many more of them than there are large ones, and they add up. Commercial strategies. These are a variety of business strategies that the Titans propose. Launching an enterprise. The law of category states that you shouldn't question a new product's superiority over its competitors. Instead, ask yourself, in what new category is this product the first? People are more accepting of entire new categories, but they get protective when a new competitor threatens their beloved brands. In the computer category, IBM came in first. In the mini-computing category, DEC came in first. Consider 10 times larger rather than just 10% more. You have to start from scratch when you expand 10 times. You're in a new place by yourself, not in competition with everyone else vying for the same 10%. Avoid going into a highly competitive field. Companies lose money due to intense competition. Co-founder of PayPal and tech investor Peter Thiel has a history of being too preoccupied with outperforming rivals rather than focusing on meaningful work. Additionally, he favors monopolies that can evade competition, believing that it is detrimental to the health of businesses to have competition. Consider this. How can I achieve more success by lowering my level of competition? Read Thiel's book 0 to 1 to learn more about his views on competitiveness. After leaving academics to become an investor, Eric Weinstein was a lecturer. He discovered that the academic community was a narrow, deteriorating place where individuals tended to be defensive and behave badly as a result. In comparison, the IT sector is far more open and rapidly expanding. It's not as much as you believe you need. Make use of what you have. To keep his budget small, director Rob Rodriguez compiles a list of the resources he has and bases his picture around them. He picked Mexico as the location for the filming since his relative had a property there. The turtle that his cousin had was also included in the film. His lack of resources also had an impact on his approach. He didn't capture high-quality audio and instead quickly edited it when it drifted off, which resulted in his signature sound. Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, said, "We survived because we lacked a plan, money, and technology. We were very cautious with every dime." By tying together previously unconnected ideas, you can generate new concepts. Anything that connects two areas and is a standard solution in one. Adding 2 wheels and a telescopic handle to baggage allowed inventor Robert Plath to reimagine it. Hiroji Sato, a table tennis player, was the first to use a sponge on his racket. Mentalities. It is not good to fail. Although it may seem apparent, embracing failure has become a typical way of thinking among digital firms. On the other hand, failure is truly unpleasant and should be avoided. Parts of these principles were popularized by the lean startup. Founder and investor Mark Andreessen believes it is overpriced and too simple to flip from a failing business. Rather, take the time to figure it out and do it well. Peter Thiel concurs that it's overrated to fail. While most people feel they can learn a great deal from failure, Thiel contends that you really don't learn much from most company failures since they occur for a variety of reasons. A company's failure may be upsetting and discouraging. Fail fast is the worst advice Jack Dorsey has ever received, according to him. Recognize core ideas rather than just strategies. Strategies become outmoded. Acquire knowledge of business concepts, such as behavioral psychology, and you will be able to develop fresh strategies that change with the times. Accept a temporary setback in exchange for a long-term gain. Wait patiently for the huge payoff. When producing The Picture Twins, Arnold Schwarzenegger received $0 pay in return for a part of the earnings. It ended up being his most successful movie to date. When the studio rejected toy rights during the Star Wars filming, George Lucas fought for them. Consider strategies that will allow you to take a risk less and yet win for yourself. Is it possible to work for free, but with greater shares in a firm you truly like? Commercial activities. You should charge for the goods you sell. In Silicon Valley, the traditional belief is to provide your product for free or at a cheap price to get volume and broad adoption. Nevertheless, this results in issues with not having enough money for marketing and sales to boost the growth engine. If your product is free, you have no idea how much you can charge for it later. However, those who pay for your product are evidence that it is excellent. For his first day-rate job, photographer Chase Jarvis demanded a high professional pay of $2,500 per day. He knew he could give value comparable to this since he had previously honed his art to that extent. In contrast to charging very high costs for his flagship courses, which are 10 to 100 times more costly than what rivals charge, author Ramit Sethi provides 98% of his content for free. Tim Ferriss refused to accept sponsors for his podcast until each episode had received over 100,000 downloads. He was able to avoid accepting Little Fish sponsors as a result. He sometimes organizes expensive events with 200 seats that cost $10,000 a ticket. Carry out swiftly. Why can't you do this in 6 months if you have a 10-year plan? Queries Peter Thiel. Give your subordinates the freedom to act independently and swiftly. The creator of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, gave his staff members discretionary authority. He was okay with a 10-20% mistake rate as long as individuals could move quickly. During the establishment of his dietary supplement firm, Tim Ferriss experienced a backlog of customer service and a decision-making bottleneck. When making judgments when less than $100 was at stake, he let his customer service staff latitude. Nothing blew out, and business carried on as usual. Nevertheless, he cut down on his weekly customer support hours from 40 to 2. According to him, when you give someone responsibility and they sense your trust, they automatically appear wiser. The rule of 3 and 10 states that when a firm grows 3 times or 10 times, everything breaks. At these turning moments, startups should prepare to reimagine their business. General Stanley McChrystal of the Army offers a similar recommendation. At the battalion level, 600 personnel, commanders must adopt a new leadership style by delegating tasks to managers rather than handling everything themselves. The converse issue that startups face is that big organizations prepare for a tripling that may never materialize and then get mired in all the additional procedures. Start recruiting by explaining why. Before instructing someone on what to do, explain to them the reason for their actions. Director Rob Rodriguez entices actors to work in his low-budget movies by promising them an unforgettable experience. They'll get fantastic feedback, feel revitalized, and enjoy themselves. For further information on this concept, see Simon Sinek's Start with Why. Whoever gives less of a damn wins. This is particularly valid during negotiations. Put yourself in a situation where you can let go of concerns. Arnold Schwarzenegger, a bodybuilder, initially shied away from little roles despite his strong desire to enter the acting world. Rather, he used real estate to become independently rich, which allowed him to postpone the big movie. Here are a few marketing suggestions. Distribute newsletters via email. Email accounts for 99% of author Ramit Sethi's income. Although there is a lot of optimization going on behind the scenes, they are designed to be straightforward one-on-one emails. If you have a photograph of your product and want to identify press contacts who have covered it, try Google Image Reverse Search. Use LinkedIn or Facebook to identify persons who are related to the authors you wish to target in order to receive warm introductions to press writers. Investment guidelines. The values that drive the actions of a number of industry giants are similar. Tony Robbins's pals, who are hedge fund managers, provide the following guidance. Stop the negative. Obsess about avoiding financial loss and safeguarding against adverse events. Discover asymmetric risk and reward. What are some ways to achieve large benefits at little risk? Allocation of assets. Diversify to lower risk. Tim Ferriss makes his own business investments. His investment criterion consists of startups with technical founders. It's in an area where his network can have an influence. He doesn't need to stoke the fire since they already have some traction. The founders have no right. It's not a jam-packed party round with plenty of people but no host. It is not a good idea to break his guidelines in order to pursue an allegedly hot offer. It has worked successfully for him to follow his guidelines, while others reject firms for other reasons. In addition to financial contributions, Ferris offers advisory time. By doing this, he is able to increase his equity without investing additional money. They're seldom low-probability moonshots, since Tim's portfolio gives him the impression that he can't possibly lose money on that transaction. Big companies like Uber, which are somewhat diversified due to their international exposure and can be considered counter-cyclical to the macroeconomy, since a stock market crash may lead people to buy fewer cars and take more rides, make a decent approximation for venture capital, as they lack the hedges that investment funds do. Kevin Rose, the creator of Dig and a former Google Ventures investor, asks himself 3 questions. Do I understand it? In 3 years, will it still be dominating and growing? In 3 years, how much of a role will technology have in our lives? What effect do the features have on the consumer's feelings? When evaluating Twitter, for example, he found that the platform's brief character limit reduced the barrier to sharing. Getting followers was a brand new pastime that encouraged scoring and rivalry. Investor and creator of Behance, Scott Belsky, advises taking lessons from the past without being bound by it. What little features enabled it to function? Which accepted wisdom did they break? Contentment and mentality. Clearly, achieving your objectives and being productive are not the only significant aspects of life. For Titans, happiness and emotional control are 2 more crucial aspects of success. Happiness, according to founder and investor Naval Ravikant, is both 1, a conscious decision you make, and 2, a talent you hone, much like working out a muscle. Be appreciative of things. Being thankful for life and all that has been bestowed upon us so far has been a recurring topic in Titans throughout the whole book. The Titans were seldom the ruthless, take-no-prisoners sort of successful people. Instead, they often took stock of their life and expressed gratitude for where they had ended up. An overview of ways individuals express thanks is as follows. According to Tony Robbins, being grateful keeps you from experiencing fear or anger. He meditates on his blessings first thing in the morning. In a 5-minute diary at the end of the day, Tim Ferriss suggests listing 3 new things for which you are thankful. Consider little things, like an old connection that really benefited you, something amazing that you witnessed, or anything straightforward that you can see, rather than repeating the same things, like your health. In addition, Tim Ferriss maintains a jar of awesome, which he opens when he needs a pick-me-up and adds to any time anything amazing occurs in a given day. It's easy to overlook these little victories. Author Seth Godin. Do you obsess about every instance in which someone has wronged or rejected you? It makes more sense to record all of the instances in which you took a chance and it turned out to be successful. You write your own story, and there's not much use in always being irate and pessimistic. Jocko Willink, a Navy SEAL, reads about human tragedy, such as the My Lai massacre, to remind himself to be thankful for what he has. In a similar vein, YouTuber Casey Neistat suggests that you read the book Little Dieter Needs to Fly, which is about a POW. In Vietnam, men will make you appreciate your comfortable existence. Joe DeSena, the founder of the Spartan race, was enraged with Wall Street and decided to take action. He wanted to suffer in the wild and go back to a period when his only needs were for food, water, and shelter, all other wants being insignificant in comparison. The book doesn't go into detail as to why having gratitude makes it easier to achieve your objectives, but here are some ideas. By acknowledging your accomplishments in the past, rather of dwelling on your many shortcomings, you may break free from the paralysis that comes with believing you are incapable of doing anything. When you recognize that an action you are frightened to do won't be as unpleasant as you think it would be, and that the consequence will be positive, you may overcome your fear. Experiencing gratitude for others fosters a collaborative mindset. Success often requires the support of others, and acknowledging previous relationships encourages the pursuit of new ones. From a neurological perspective, positive reinforcement of the behavioral circuits that generated the memories is achieved when you feel good about your recollections. For example, if you are thankful for the time you spent connecting with a long-lost friend and having a wonderful weekend together, this will motivate you to continue acting in that manner, once again in the future. Obtaining context. Your worries might take up all of your time while you're in the thick of things. Take some time to get perspective. Chances are, the issues you're facing right now aren't that serious in the broad picture. Dr. B.J. Miller uses the sky to get perspective. He muses on how old the light from stars is and how it may have vanished by the time he sees the star. This helps to put all of his little, unimportant concerns in perspective. Memento mori. A lot of giants keep track of the days they have left on a calendar. A 30-year-old has around 20,000 days left, which is a startlingly tiny amount. Writer Tim Urban noted in a widely read essay that you have already spent 93% of your in-person parent time by the time you leave your parents' home for college. Overcoming challenges may be aided by realizing that everything, whether good and terrible, is fleeting. The book provides several terms to help you remember this. The Persian proverb, "This too shall pass," is applicable to both good and unpleasant things. Chris Sacca, "I'm going to bed tonight." A mindfulness exercise called Just Note Gone teaches you to recognize when whatever you are experiencing is gone. This might be an idea, a feeling, or a breath. Knowing that all feelings are fleeting can help you to overcome even the most difficult situations and painful experiences, since you will ultimately be free of them as well. Making connections with other people may also help you view your problems in a different light. According to author Sebastian Junger, mental health seems to be enhanced by a sense of belonging. Tragedies such as 9/11 lead to a decline in violent crime, suicide, and mental health symptoms. One possible explanation is that people's typical psychological fears are lessened when they have a sense of group membership. Mindfulness and meditation. According to Tim Ferriss, the majority of people he interviews engage in some kind of mindfulness or meditation. You feel happier, less anxious, and more conscious of your life as a result. It's not necessary to do it each day. In his early years, Arnold Schwarzenegger spent a year routinely meditating, and he still reaps the advantages now. When faced with challenges, he can concentrate, de-stress, disengage his thoughts, and address each issue one at a time. Working while repeating a single song or album on repeat is a comparable tendency. This is similar to mindfulness meditation in that it induces a trance-like state of attention. Compassion. People are a typical source of emotional irritation. We continue to relive and nurture our grudges with other individuals. How they have mistreated us. This is often a skewed and false perception. You'll probably be able to quit detesting the other person once you can sympathize with them. Alain de Botton, a philosopher, suggests that while assisting someone who is distressed, consider if they have been denied their fundamental needs. Perhaps they haven't eaten or slept well lately, or they're thinking about other issues. When a newborn cries, you don't automatically assume that they detest you and wish to destroy you. Blaming someone for not comprehending you is absurd. Most individuals struggle to communicate who they are to others because they don't really comprehend who they are. You can also possibly explain yourself more clearly. Chef Chris Young, author of Modernist Cuisine. Show empathy for the person receiving comments. Are you treating them unfairly because you are more knowledgeable than they are, or because you comprehend more than they do? There are useful advantages to empathy. Tech entrepreneur Chris Sacca believes that empathy, which allows you to view the world through their eyes, aids in the development of better goods and solutions for people. Handling unfavorable feelings. Uncertainty. In several of his interviews, Tim Ferriss asks, "What would you advise your younger self?" The most typical reply was, "Calm down, don't worry, everything will work out." Suffering is invited by your ego. According to Tony Robbins, misery results from concentrating on oneself and one's own emotions. If you worry about your children, it's not because you actually care about them. Rather, it's because you feel like you've failed them. You have 3 choices in life. You may choose to fix it, accept it, or let it go. It is not a good idea to have one preference, but not pursue it. This is similar to wanting to leave a situation, but not taking any action to do so. Handling tense circumstances. Whether in combat, in a crucial corporate decision, or during a sporting event, a number of titans are under extreme strain to perform well under duress. They've evolved mental strategies that help them remain composed in stressful situations. People imitate your conduct. This is a leadership proverb from the Navy SEALs. Calm is contagious. They will also remain calm if you do. They will panic as well if you do. Matt Mullenweg is an excellent example of how getting upset won't help things when faced with a crisis. Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, is renowned for his unwavering calm. In direct insults, he has said, "I'm perfectly willing to accept that." Chef Sam Cass. Maintaining composure is key to success in the kitchen. You can figure out most things if you remain composed. If not, everything collapses. A giant related a tale about his encounter with boxer Evander Holyfield before to one of his major bouts. Holyfield dismissed the Titan's concerns that he was interfering with his pre-fight preparation. He was aware that nothing would change in the moments leading up to a battle since he had done all in his power to prepare for it. Before she started doing stand-up comedy, comedian Whitney Cummings had a similar concept. 3 months before, she had already worked hard. On performance night, she was just turning up. Handling enemies. People will try to bring you down as you attempt to accomplish your ambitions. 10% of individuals will take something personally. The more visibility you have, the more individuals who will appear to criticize you. Expect this and approach it like arithmetic. Anticipate your detractors' criticisms in order to deflect them. In your writing, respond to counterarguments and/or be humorous with yourself. Tim Ferriss disarms detractors who may have labeled him a professional dilettante by referring to himself as such. Comedian Margaret Cho approaches hecklers with empathy, attempting to really understand why this individual is interfering with a show that everyone has paid for and committed to attend. Give them a great deal of attention and time. Is this person usually like this? Inquire with the person is with. Was she like this before the show? Inquire others in her immediate vicinity. This not only makes people feel ashamed, but it might also result in a sincere bond. Spend some time responding to the insightful critiques to demonstrate that you don't take yourself too seriously. This will cut down on the actual hate-mongers. Fury. Holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal while waiting to throw it at someone else, goes a Buddhist proverb. Don't ignore or stifle your anger when it arises. Express your clear acknowledgement of it. This aids in the problem's resolution. Refrain from engaging in fighting. Stay away from folks who are often arguing with each other because they will ultimately start arguing with you. Preventing suicide. Tim Ferriss wrote a whole chapter about his experience with suicidal ideation at the conclusion of his undergraduate career. His advice? Dial the National Hotline for Suicide Prevention. Understand yourself would also kill other people spiritually. multiply your suffering by 10 and distribute it to your loved ones. The anguish of seeing a loved one commit suicide is that. There's no assurance that taking your own life would make things better. If there is a hell, you may spend all of eternity in torment. With a buddy, make a non-harm agreement. Make it equally about them and about you. Skepticism. According to media presenter Jason Silva, having jaded or cynical views is akin to being dead. You view the world through glass darkly, nothing amazes you, and you feel like you've seen it all before. Developing feelings of positivity. These are exercises designed to cultivate happy feelings. Joy of loving kindness. When you really think, I wish for this person to be happy, it makes you feel happier and deflects attention from your own ego. Both complete strangers and individuals you know may participate in this. Comedian Whitney Cummings advises saying, I love you, to someone you meet in your mind before striking up a discussion. Consider carrying out this action at locations like Starbucks or the DMV where you may easily get irritated. Working energy. To enter his aggressive creative mode, Eric Weinstein screams a series of obscenities for 7 seconds. Make your own, then read it aloud as if you were chanting. Fake it till you make it. Your emotions and thoughts are influenced by your body. Vlogging, according to YouTuber Shay Carl, may be everyday therapy. He grins and feels better at the end, even if he is not pleased. Sometimes all he does is laugh at himself in the mirror. Exercise. Show appreciation for others. Give things some perspective and express gratitude for the little things in life. List 3 things for which you are thankful. Consider little things, like an old connection that really benefited you, something amazing that you witnessed, or anything straightforward that you can see, rather than repeating the same things, like your health. Consider an instance when you took a chance and it paid off. What took place? What emotions does this bring to mind? What is causing you stress at the moment? Does thinking on the stressor help you feel better? Try thinking, this too shall pass. Or, at the end of today, I'll be in my bed. Captivating brief thoughts. Here are a ton of tools of Titans concepts that aren't often used. As always, read the original book to obtain all the helpful advice, since there are a lot more concepts in it than we can discuss here. How to bring up your children. Titans discussed a range of early life experiences that shaped who they are now, or methods they use with their children. Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, gained an understanding of complexity in a variety of situations by playing a lot of challenging board games. When PayPal needed to find out how to turn a complicated company into a viable one, they used this. Author Seth Godin. Present your children with engaging challenges to tackle in order to teach them problem-solving and leadership skills. Instead of using more force or better compliance, our country must use ingenuity to compete on the global arena. It is important to teach girls to face their fears and to not give them any more caution or protection than guys do. Josh Waitzkin, a chess player. Avoid categorizing the weather for your children as nice or terrible, since this may cause them to associate the weather with mood swings. Saying, it's a beautiful rainy day, and playing outdoors in spite of the weather is preferable. Entrepreneur Brian Johnson. When training children to ride a bike, for example, encourage them to reflect on what they're doing without micromanaging them. What went through your mind when you were working on this? Which chances did you take? Other thought-provoking thoughts. This is a random assortment of thought-provoking concepts that are not particularly ordered. Don't answer questions straight away when they are posed. As a classic PR tactic, respond to the question you intended to be asked and concentrate your response on your desired subject. In answer to Tim's query, when you hear the word successful, who comes to mind? In response, novelist Derek Sivers said that because it's natural, thinking about the first person that comes to mind isn't all that fascinating. The third individual who springs to mind is more intriguing. Investor Peter Thiel said he dislikes thinking in terms of trends, since it indicates there is a lot of rivalry and a lot of people doing the same thing. This was in answer to a question about his favorite tech trends. He is more interested in a feeling of purpose than in trends. Identifying and apprehending academic dishonesty. In his capacity as a professor, Luis von Ahn created a conundrum he named Jerome Christo's conundrum. The answer was then posted on his own website, allowing him to monitor the IP addresses of everyone who Googled the answer. After a few instances of such behavior, his pupils stopped cheating because they were terrified that there would always be a trick. Tim Ferriss's writing advice: use TK as a stand-in for something you may need to look up later in your copy. The English language has few or no words that include these two letters together. Next, you may look up TK online to discover anything you need fixing afterward. Make sure to capture the audio of your interview with a journalist so you have a copy for your own use. Verify their consent before using the audio again. Personal security. Tim Ferriss had to worry more about his safety as he gained in notoriety. He learned a few pointers. When being picked up at airports, kidnappers often pose as drivers and hold up a sign with your name. Use Uber instead of making a real name reservation for your vehicle to prevent this. Use an encryption program like You'll Never Take Me Alive to safeguard your computer's data. This program will cause your laptop to hibernate when the power is turned off. This stops the burglar from using a weakness in the laptop to access data while it is still powered on. Learning the macro from the micro. Josh Waitzkin, a chess player, began his study of the game with merely 2 kings and a piece in the final game, rather than the opening moves. Bigger ideas like antagonism and empty space were illustrated by this simple scenario. Cooking as a bonding activity. Although you may not know each other at first, everyone is unified when cooking in order to complete a project and avoid losing fingers. Each person may bring a unique skill set to the project. How to encourage folks to invite you to stay and dine in their homes. Journalist Cal Fussman used to approach strangers in Europe and inquire, "How do you make the ideal goulash?" He would approach a grandmother, get assistance from interpreters, and each individual would then want to demonstrate their unique local specialty to him. Choosing the greatest recipe from the internet. Andrew Zimmern advises looking for the recipe with the most details. You can tell that someone has gone through the procedure and ironed out all the bugs if they go into great detail about it, down to the 1/4 inch size of the pan. If all they say is grease the pan, you may be certain that something is amiss. Don't get fixated on making notes on everything. The positive aspects will endure. Chef Joshua Skeeny's. After a flood destroyed all of his recipe notes, he was able to start again and create the 3-star Saison restaurant. Paulo Coelho, the author. Avoid taking notes. The unimportant will eventually go. What matters will never change. Receiving phone feedback. Comic Mike Birbiglia enjoys speaking with people to gain their opinions on his gags and pieces. When someone is listening in person, they are under pressure to laugh or answer. The fact that the listener feels better at ease remaining quiet over the phone should be sufficient to gauge how hilarious the joke is. When on stage, leave the house lights on. It's a connection, not a performance, because Brown wants to see people's faces when she speaks. The tiger that was freed. Mohini, a tiger, spent 5 or 10 years in a 10 by 10 foot cage. It was eventually let out into a large pasture, but it lived out its days in a 10 by 10 foot space. The takeaway is that you might erect fictitious walls around yourself even if you have freedom. Getting well. The Titans provide a wide range of health advice, although in contrast to the aforementioned core themes, the counsel is often more diverse. Here, we've compiled the range of concepts. Good guidelines for general health. Replace diet and exercise with eat and train. The latter is more utilitarian and has a defined objective, whereas the former is just cosmetic. Focus on the areas where you feel most ashamed of yourself. This holds true both outside of sports. All the supple yoga practitioners ought to lift weights, and all the massive lifters need to practice yoga. Being adaptable is a passive quality. Being mobile means having to be strong across your whole range of motion. Finding a reputable physician. Find out from your physician what cholesterol does. This distinguishes between physicians who only use heuristics and those who have a true understanding of a subject. Observe how much time they spend on your first visit. They most likely care more about you the longer they've known you. Spend time with pushy individuals. To get his energy up, 80-year-old Don Wildman surrounds himself with younger folks and goes skiing from a helicopter. Recommended exercises. The following exercises are included in the book QL Stroll. Warm up for the glutes and quads. Jefferson Curl. Perform this to increase your mobility at the start of an exercise. Start with 15 pounds. Ag walks with assistance from the back. Draws attention to issues with shoulder strength or flexibility. Pike's pulses. Perform 15 to 20 pulses. Walk-in cast wall. Cossack squat exercises to improve ankle flexibility. How to deadlift to get the most strength. Do 2 to 3 sets of 2 to 3 repetitions each after deadlifting to your knees. Plyometrics should be performed after each set. Sprint 10-20 meters, 6.8 box jumps. Take 5 minutes to recover. Perform it twice a week. Lubricate the groove. Use half of your maximum reps for pull-ups in sets spread out throughout the day, with a minimum of 15 minutes in between. Phosphate hypercompensation may be created with the remaining amount. Interesting medical practices to take into account. Numerous giants dabble with unconventional medical and health methods. This is an assortment of them. Healthcare. Keep in mind that you may employ the mesenchymal stem cells found in removed teeth to help repair tissue such as bone, cartilage, and motor neurons. This is known as stem cell banking. This is more of a future bet since the science isn't quite there yet. Metformin. Although this medication is mostly used to treat diabetes, some research suggests it may also provide cancer prevention benefits. It suppresses signals linked to the growth of cancer and interferes with the liver's capacity to produce glucose. Restricting calories and fasting, which have shown anti-cancer benefits, may be similar to the effects. Blood examinations. The most atherogenic particle is LPA, and excessive levels are inherited by 10% of the population. The most frequent cause of inherited atherosclerosis is this. Oral glucose tolerance test. Metabolic issues are predicted by hyperinsulinemia. Your total insulin production is measured by HbA1c, a sign of diabetes. Magnesium may decrease this amount. Lithium. A medication used to treat bipolar illness. Lithium has been shown in tiny dosages to reduce suicide rates and enhance mood and cognitive function. Acarbose. Lowers blood sugar when taken after a meal. An anti-diabetic medication as well. Well-being. Hyperthermic conditioning. Exposure to heat, such as that found in a sauna, increases. Endurance and growth hormone levels. Growth hormone is increased 5 times in 2 15-minute dry heat sessions at 100 C, followed by 30 minutes of cooling. This process lasts for many hours. Blood levels of ketones increase with an extremely rigorous ketogenic diet, a condition known as ketosis. For Tim Ferriss, 1 monoramol of beta-hydroxybutyrate results in increased mental clarity. Moreover, ketones have shown anti-inflammatory and anti-catabolic properties. Therapeutic fasts. 1 to 3 fasts a year may stop rapidly proliferating cells, starve precancerous cells, and make cancer more susceptible to chemotherapy. Using stem cells, 5-day fasts 2 to 3 times a year may revitalize the immune system. Extremely, Dr. Dominic D'Agostino recommends foregoing chemotherapy in favor of a ketogenic diet as the foundational treatment for advanced cancer. Overall health. Strength is increased by hyperventilation. Try to do a few push-ups before you fail. Note down the number. Take a 30-minute break. Complete 40 repetitions of fully inhaling and then exhaling out. You ought to feel tingly. Perform a second round of push-ups while holding your breath on the last exhale. Your count of push-ups ought to skyrocket. Hugs. Wim Hof gives unique, heart-to-heart embraces by placing his left arm over the recipient's shoulder. Discover a fun workout that you love. Treadmills are not the most enjoyable method to move your body. Cream made from gotu kola, used for stretch marks or slack skin. Stretching. To reduce damage, end static stretching with a voluntary contraction. Mobility. Keep your feet and knees together as you squat all the way to the ground. This demonstrates limitations in the ankle and hip range of motion. To get more strength, activate your muscular tendons. For instance, massage your legs back for 8 to 10 seconds, just above the knee and below the butt, to stimulate your hamstrings. Boost stamina via breathing. Make up your mind in advance how many breaths you will take to relax between sets. This will cause your respiration to slow. Tanks for sensory deprivation and flotation. According to Tim Ferriss, 2 weeks of twice-weekly floating is equivalent to a month of daily meditation. Put on zero-drop shoes, which allow your heel and toes to be the same distance from the ground. This keeps your Achilles tendon from becoming shorter. Common examples include Chuck Taylors or Vans. Preventing jet lag. It appears that doing out for 5 to 10 minutes as soon as you arrive resets your body clock. Tetris as emotional therapy. Video games that take up your visual center include Bejeweled and Tetris. This prevents you from continuously revisiting the subject of your obsession. It has shown efficacy in treating PTSD, addiction, and insomnia. A chili pad is a sheet that you place beneath your bed linens to circulate cold water and soothe your body if you tend to overheat while you sleep. Drinks that help you fall asleep. Apple cider vinegar with honey. Yogi's calming caramel tea for bed. Being mindful. Meditating helps you concentrate on the few things that really important rather than seizing every chance that comes your way. It won't make you less sharp. It facilitates your recovery from interruptions. Getting 30% to 50% more done in a day with 50% less stress is the benefit of meditation. Try taking only one conscious breath each day. Psychedelic substances. Numerous giants said that using psychedelics had a significant impact on their outlook on life. Tim Ferriss claims that after 48 hours of psychedelic experiences, he was able to let go of decades-old bitterness and animosity. Jim Fadiman encouraged participants in a trial at a major corporation to bring in issues they had been battling for months. After taking psychedelics for a few hours, they were instructed to focus on the issues. Out of 48 issues, 44 had a solution. Transcendental experiences, or the sense of interconnectedness with other objects and life systems, have the most profoundly good consequences. This makes you realize that your ego is not who you are in the greatest way. It is believed that psychedelic experiences are real, genuine manifestations of your mind, rather than manufactured goods. To experience the benefits, you don't have to take psychedelics constantly. You may feel as if you've returned to the jail of your daily problems after an encounter, only to discover that the door was locked from the inside. Particular psychedelics. People with depression may feel better enough after taking microdoses of LSD or psilocybin to take action. Nearly all neurotransmitter classes, including opioid, NMDA, serotonin, sigma, and nicotinic receptors, seem to be impacted by ibogaine. Advice for psychedelic users. Spend time with an experienced sitter. Excellent sitters don't want you to go through a certain experience and don't have any agendas. Steer clear of negative thoughts while having the event. If you get an answer during a session, apply the knowledge to your life by completing your assignment following the session. Don't count on using the psychedelic right now. You become more prone to suggestion after a psychedelic encounter, and you form both positive and negative habits. A time of introspection and assimilation is beneficial thereafter. The 17 Questions of Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss employs a series of 17 questions to test his assumptions. What would happen if I took a 48-hour break from my regular routine? It might be necessary to reverse what you're doing if you're stuck and not achieving the desired result. The impact is minimal if you do the opposite for only 48 hours. At worst, you fail and return to your regular schedule. At most, you discover a fresh, effective method of doing things. Tim wasn't hitting his sales targets when he started out as a computer product salesperson. He was at a loss for what to do, so he decided to do the opposite by observing what the other salesmen were doing. Tim chose to call outside of the 9 to 5 hours while other people worked 9 to 5. He discovered that he could get through to CEOs and avoid their assistants, who were not working during regular business hours. What do I personally spend a lot of money on when it comes to company ideas? If you want to start a company but are unsure about what issue to tackle, this is the ideal question for you. It's likely that you have been handling that issue on your own. Following the dot-com bust, Tim Ferriss intended to launch his own business. Rather than doing extensive market research, he examined his credit card bills and discovered that, although earning $40,000 a year, he was spending $500 a month on sports supplements. This confirmed a need he had for himself that he might develop into a company. Better still, as a frequent buyer, he was well versed in the workings of the market, including which advertisements performed the best and whose suppliers had the greatest standing. He started a company, developed a supplement called Brain Quicken that he couldn't find on the market, and laid the path for the 4-hour workweek and other innovations. How would I spend my $10 million if I had it to myself? Is $10 million really all I need to live this kind of life now? Are you suffering through a terrible career in the hopes of retiring and finding nirvana? Because life is brief, make the most of it by designing the life you want now, rather than postponing it for 20 to 40 years, when, God forbid, a terrible sickness or accident may cut it short. Realizing your dream life might be surprisingly simple. Tim Ferriss was pushed to the brink of his endurance while developing Brain Quicken, feeling stuck in his hyper-caffeinated workaholic state of mind. He paused to consider the type of lifestyle he really desired. Tim did some fast math and found that his goal lifestyle was significantly less expensive than he had thought. Rather than money, what he was lacking was time and flexibility. This inspired him to completely restructure his life even before he received his $10 million. What could possibly go wrong? Would I be able to recover if that happened? Uncertainty is the source of anxiety. Because you are aware of what will happen when you turn on your faucet, you don't become nervous about it. But since you never know what will happen, you are nervous about asking someone out or leaving your job to start a company. This question forces you to identify the specifics of your fear. It's simpler to battle your demons if you know what they are. Tim Ferriss had a fantasy of going on a year-long vacation sabbatical while he was feeling anxious about Brain Quicken. He was very much involved in the business's operations, and it was firing on all cylinders. For 6 months, his dream was just that, a dream. At last, he made himself doubt his presumptions. What might have been the worst-case scenario? Well, his company may come to a complete stop and perhaps declare bankruptcy. If there was a problem with the product, he may be sued, his possessions would be taken, and his bank account would collapse. Then, upon traveling, he can get malaria. Was that all then? Tim found that it wasn't as horrible as he had imagined after visualizing the worst-case scenario. He may recover even in this terrible scenario. Better more, he could solve the issues now because he had defined them. How could he strengthen his commercial operations if, without him, they would collapse? How was he going to guard against malaria? He didn't know these issues were that simple. What would I do if I limited my working hours to 2 hours a week? How do you maximize the time that you have? How could you increase your odds of not being fired if someone was holding a gun to your head and you were only required to work 2 hours a week? For the greatest results out of your time, use the 80-20 rule. This is a very useful question for managers. However, it may also provide insights on your own job if you're not a manager. This question helped Tim Ferriss turn his one-year hiatus from Brain Quicken into a reality. He sacked his highest maintenance clients and concentrated on the concentrated goods and clients that brought him the most money. He streamlined business by automating order processing. Delegation. What happens if I provide total discretion over choices up to $100? $500? Your productivity is being limited if you have a tendency to micromanage. It's obvious that you take pride in your work and that you want to make fewer errors, but it's also likely that you overestimate the mistakes that other people make. Because you're working on low-impact tasks that other people should be doing, this drastically reduces your leverage. Ferris put roughly 40 hours a week attending to customer support, putting out fires, and fielding inquiries while overseeing Brain Quicken. Requests for specific products or customs paperwork would cut him off. He thought he should be the one making the calls. Therefore, he took the opposite action, as per question 1, and gave his customer support representatives more authority. He sent an email saying, "If it involves less than $100, please make the decision yourself." He went over these situations once a week with his workers to prevent misuse. Remarkably, not many disasters occurred, and he increased the barrier progressively to $500 and finally $1,000. From weekly to monthly to never, reviews changed. As a result, he cut down on the 40 hours a week he used for personal customer support to only 2 hours. Which marketing or promotion channel is underutilized the most? This inquiry relates to you more directly if you're in the business of selling goods or services. How can you connect with individuals in a manner that your rivals aren't? When promoting your book, what absolutely didn't work? Was a question Tim Ferriss posed to best-selling writers when he launched his first book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Which would you prioritize more? He had heard about blogging on a regular basis. He went to a trade fair and hovered around bloggers, listening in on discussions and asking questions, not understanding anything about blogging. His first viral postings came from starting his 4-Hour Workweek blog as a result of this. Even if you're not trying to sell something, there are still opportunities to provide value that don't follow the rules. If you are an attorney, for instance, and your competitors are attempting to become partners by putting in a lot of hours, how about you took a different approach and concentrated on bringing in new clients? Given that YouTube is a well-known and congested network, if you're looking to start a new channel, where should you start? What fresh, emerging channel should you start with? Marketing. What happens if I don't make a straight product pitch? People dislike receiving product sales pitches and notifications. They like listening to stories. In his efforts to promote the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss was unable to get journalists to include his book. However, he created captivating tales based on ideas presented in the book. He presented the book's success stories, individuals who completely changed their way of life. He wrote in books like Geek to Freak on his own physical metamorphoses. He made The 4-Hour Chef available as a free audiobook download on BitTorrent. His works gained additional exposure as a result of these compelling tales. Education. What if I created my own degree in lieu of an official one? Every training course or graduate degree has significant financial and opportunity expenses. Could you take all that money and acquire better or equal training instead of attending the program? Tim Ferriss believed early in his career that earning an MBA would help him acquire new skills, expand his network, or improve the appearance of his RSUM. He eventually understood that he could use startup funding to achieve all 3 objectives. He budgeted $120K, estimating that an MBA would cost $120K over 2 years, to make modest investments in businesses, ranging from $10K to $20K. Most importantly, Tim was ready to lose everything, just as he would have lost his business school tuition. Instead of being afraid, this motivated him to take action. He felt the experience and the expanded network were well worth the $120,000 even if his investments were a bust. He made a few investments and developed his own set of investing guidelines after studying hundreds of entrepreneurs and investors. In the end, his investments paid off, yielding a 2-fold return. Tim's point of view is applicable to training programs, college, and all graduate degrees. Do I have to return anything the same way if I lose it? Have you ever lost an opportunity or an investment? The first thing you want to do is try to get it back the same manner you lost it. However, this could be ineffective and disregards the worth of your time. Tim Ferriss lost money during the Great Recession in 2008 while owning a home in San Jose. Then, selling would entail a $150,000 dropped. His buddies suggested that he rent the home until the property's worth increased. Tim was unhappy as a result of all the problems associated with property management after taking the advice. Rather than that, he understood that his time, not money, was the actual value here. He might be able to recover the $150,000 over the course of 5 years by watching over his residence. However, he could be able to increase his brand and company by $500,000. With the same amount of time and effort, Tim made the choice to sell the home. It's common to get fixated on a loss when you're under stress. You'll find yourself wondering how to get back what you lost, but you have to look beyond the weeds and discover alternative paths. If you feel like you've lost a debate, you may not need to start again in that particular argument. Instead, consider cutting your losses, owning up to your mistakes, and planning how to do better the next time. Have you lost your boss's favor? Perhaps you shouldn't try to win it back by doing what brought you there in the first place. Instead, play to your strengths and find a different way to prove your worth. In fact, it might be time to leave the current company altogether rather than try to rise back up the ranks. How may I use subtraction and simplification to solve this problem? It is often simpler to remove items than to add them. What can you make simpler in order to grow? This defies logic, as it would appear that more movement in more directions would result in greater advancement. However, the ROI of your various activities varies, and you ought to concentrate your efforts on them. Tim demonstrated subtraction while using Brain Quicken. How may he cut down on the amount of time he spends helping customers? How could he cut down on how many choices he had to make? This led to increasing employee autonomy and automating order fulfillment. This also holds true for smaller, more tactical elements like your website or product. Design. The conversion rate may be raised by reducing the amount of distracting elements. On a larger scale, the significance of attention was previously discussed. Reducing the amount of things on your plate might help you live a simpler life and accomplish more. How can I be missing for 4 to 8 weeks without my career or company collapsing? Spending some time away can help you recover perspective if you're feeling exhausted. You'll find enhancements you can use right now by making sure your company or job continues to function properly when you're away. However, this topic is still relevant, even if you have no intention of taking a vacation. Tim Ferriss asks the question in 2 distinct ways. It's not simply a vacation. You have to go off the grid intentionally. You are not allowed to check your email during this period. You are also gone for 4 to 8 weeks. Taking a 2-week break is insufficient? People will just let little grievances build up knowing that you will be back in 2 weeks. They have to handle the problems on their own when they know you'll be gone for 8 weeks. Providing an answer to this question will highlight the areas in which you are acting like a fireman and neglecting to look at the wider picture. You need to delegate power to others. Make sure they understand their responsibilities. Put in place automated systems that expedite procedures, and more if you're going to be gone for 8 weeks. This will enable your company or job to run well without your constant presence, which will lower stress and let you to concentrate on the bigger picture. Do I hunt little or large game? James Carville, a political strategist, uses the example of a lion hunting game. Field mice are very simple to hunt and kill, but the energy needed to do this is more than the energy contained in the mouse. A lion that pursued field mice would eventually starve to death. Lions must hunt antelope instead. Though they need more muscle and energy to kill, antelope provide the lion a lot more food when they are killed. The life analogy is to concentrate on the important things in life. Avoid chasing after pointless minutiae, field mice that are simple to dispatch, but don't help you get closer to your objectives. A lot of us have an addiction to the appearance of busyness. Being too committed makes us feel as if society needs us. It's also crucial since it lets your friends know how busy and significant you are. Rather, concentrate on the few significant issues that really matter. Although they may take more work to complete, they will help you succeed. Could it be that I'm really happy? It's possible that you're hardwired to strive for success and to always be miserable. What if you could be content with your present situation? Tim Ferriss discovered that he is much happier now because he is grateful for both his history and present. He expresses gratitude for 3 things every morning in his journal, such as a satisfying cup of tea or a buddy he last saw a year ago. How would this seem if it were simple? People often make achievement too complicated. Once again, the constant sense of effort and tension makes the task at hand appear very vital. But what if there was another way? What if you could use your abilities to tackle a more significant issue where opportunities for improvement were more abundant? Where can you achieve a 5x increase rather than a 5% improvement? Avoid making things too complicated or thinking that you must battle. As previously said, simplify for maximum effectiveness. Find a method to roll a stone down a slope. It's probably not the correct answer if it's not straightforward. How can I address this issue with money? How can I raise my standard of living with money? The driving force behind this is that time is the one finite resource that affects everyone on Earth. In many cases, this is definitely worth the money if you can purchase extra time. Tim Ferriss advises using your time to make money throughout your early career. Once you've progressed farther, you ought to spend your funds to buy time. You don't have an issue if you have the resources to fix it. These are some such instances that spring to mind. Transportation. It may cost $3 to use public transportation and take an hour to walk. It may cost $6 and take 20 minutes to take an Uber. Cleaning. You could choose to hire a maid if you don't love doing the washing and cleaning. In a city, you may purchase $100 worth of cleaning supplies, which can save you 5 hours each month and result in a cleaner home. Discounts. It may not be worth your while to go out of your way to get little discounts. It may be less than your hourly rate if you're investing 2 hours over many weeks looking for flights in order to save $40. You could spend $200, $300 a month on all of this in order to reclaim hundreds of hours of time. These are just a few modest, commonplace instances. You start creating opportunities like employing a personal assistant or accountant if your hourly fee is high enough. After that, you may utilize this time to improve your own happiness. This time may be used for leisure activities or just unwinding. Alternatively, you might put that time to better use by reading books to increase your effectiveness on a personal level. Can I do almost as much if I take it easy? Stress puts you at risk for burnout and reduces your productivity. Consequently, having to take breaks reduces your productivity. While a vehicle may continue coasting at a slower pace, a train must stop at many stations on its route quicker than a car. The narrative of Derek Sivers's 25-mile bike trip near his home is shared. It would take him 43 minutes, pushing as hard as he could as he sweated and huffed. He made the decision to take it easy one day since this was stressful. He will attempt to slower than usual and enjoy the journey while taking in the clear sky and the birds. After the trip, he discovered that it had taken 45 minutes. He just had to bear intense tension for an additional 2 minutes. The main idea is that you don't have to live a life of regret. If you keep placing one foot in front of the other, you'll make it almost all the way there. Slow is smooth, goes a proverb in the U.S. military. Quick is smooth. Practice. Ask serious questions about yourself. Try a few of Tim Ferriss's most well-liked inquiries. Consider an issue you're struggling to solve. What would happen if you took a 48-hour break from your regular routine? How may it appear? Consider the same issue. How may you remove and simplify items to remedy this problem? How can you raise your standard of living with money? Do you have any little issues that you could easily fix with money? Can you use money to buy yourself more time? Questionnaires. This is a list of resources for recruiting, crafting effective inquiries, and finding solutions to your everyday issues. Appropriate interview questions. In their job interviews, giants love to ask the following questions. What is it that really excites you, in your opinion? Adam Gazzaley, a neuroscientist. What intriguing project are you engaged in? Why does it pique your interest? What about it surprises you? Does anybody else have this on their mind? Scientist and chef Chris Young. What are you doing that is so important that nobody else seems to be aware of it? Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit. Founder of WordPress Matt Mullenweg auditions his staff members rather than doing interviews. Investor Peter Thiel once said, "Tell me something that's true that very few people agree with you on." What daily issue do you encounter that hasn't been resolved yet? What fantastic business hasn't someone launched? Peter Thiel. What would you create with $100 million if I handed it to you? How can it be justified? Gabe Newell, the creator of Valve. What will your detractors say about you? Chris, a leadership consultant and former Navy SEAL. Fussell. Questions to get people to tell stories. These are some conversation starters and questions to use with others. Tell me about a moment when. Tell me about the time or day when. Tell me the tale of. Describe the discussion you had when you discovered. What steps led you to that realization? What was your reaction to that? How do you interpret that? What insights did it provide you? Tell us more about it. What would the old you say if it could see the new you? You seem very now. Was that always the way it was? Describe the internal argument you had around a certain choice or occurrence. Before anybody taught you what you were meant to do as a youngster, what did you want to do? You must be vulnerable in order to receive vulnerability from others. Advice on how to perform an interview. For his podcast, Tim Ferriss has conducted interviews with hundreds of notable individuals. His advice on getting individuals to tell interesting tales is as follows. Tell the person you are interviewing to relax. They can always edit the final product and remove content at a later time, but they cannot add intriguing content at a later time. Journalist Cal Fussman. Go to the head first, then aim for the heart when asking questions. This will lead you on a pathway to the soul. Make sure the individual is thinking by posing an unexpected question to them. What's the best lesson your father ever taught you? Was the question Cal Fussman posed to Gorbachev during their discussion, rather than focusing on the Cold War. Comedian Mike Birbiglia was the first to learn that his wife was expecting when they met President Obama. After that, he asked Obama for parenting tips, and the president responded by talking about nursing, sleep, and diapers. What makes a great teacher? Seeking someone who excelled in a certain sport is not the best way to locate a teacher for that activity or sport. You must locate someone with experience in training others. Tim likes to ask the following questions. Who should not be excellent at activity and who is? Which activity trainers are the most contentious? Why? How do you feel about them? Which lesser-known educators have the most outstanding resumes? What distinguishes you as an educator? Who taught you or had an impact on you? Have you been effective in training others? What level of success do your pupils have? What are the most common errors and misunderstandings you see in training? Which time-wasting activities are the worst? Which textbooks or other study materials are your favorites for this subject? How would you train me if you had $1 million on the line and had to train me for a competition for 12 weeks? How about 8 weeks? Thank you for watching. Please follow, like and share Mr. Mentorpreneur.